how I've always made it, and this is what I'm... It's time to discuss fermentation, primary and secondary, because there seems to be a lot of confusion. Welcome back to the channel. Today we got something special because I want to discuss primary fermentation and secondary fermentation and what the difference is. And we're making a couple batches of wine. What are we making?
Strawberry.
Strawberry, one of our favorites, right?
Yes. Banana, one of my favorites. Peanut butter banana. Not tried that yet, but I'm sure I'm going to love it. And then we're going to try chocolate-covered banana.
Why did you say that?
Why?
That was a surprise.
Oh.
Sanitize. This is what fermentation is all about. It's fermenting our wine. It's turning all that sugar into alcohol. That's what you want in this stage. But make sure you're watching our yeast video where you see where we fed these with some homemade yeast nutrients. Let's get these organic strawberries opened up. Always use organic. I want to dig into the weeds of some things like what's primary fermentation, what's secondary. So we're going to use these wines that Laura mentioned to make all these different kinds of wines. Now, another thing, primary fermentation is when you're going to put your additives. I got a whole video on additives. So if you want to know what each one does, make sure you're watching that additives video. Again, we're digging into the weeds for this. I'm putting a whole playlist. I want to get more detailed into this wine process. So if somebody says, tell me about your additives, I can say, watch that video. But the additives are always done in primary fermentation. This is where you need to add these, most of them. There's some exceptions that we're going to do because we're using some grapes in some of this wine we're making today. Tannins is the only one that I would suggest. If you're using grapes, you don't need tannins. So we talked about the additives in primary. What additives you put into your secondary? You don't put additives into your secondary until you're ready to bottle. You're going to rack this, which is the process of filtering. Again, I'm going to do a whole separate video on that. But that's going to be when we're refining this. We're basically getting all the sediment out. That's what we want. But the good thing about secondary, and I'm going to do it on the next batch of apple wine, you can float cinnamon sticks in here, or cloves, or star of anise. You can put that in here just to give your wine flavor. So with apple, I'm going to make a cinnamon apple wine, and I would just float a couple cinnamon sticks in here because this is going to be in here for 30 days each rack. And imagine that cinnamon flavor. It's just going to infuse into your wine. And I will tell you one thing. I mean, these bananas are the perfect ripeness. That's what you want when they're starting to turn yellow, but it smells like a strawberry pina colada in here, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The bananas all through the house, the strawberries. I'm ready. Let's go.
Okay.
All right. Primary fermentation. You got to have one of these. This is a 6.5 gallon bucket that's good for making 3, 5, and 6 gallon batches of wine. You got to have a fermentation bucket. If you're doing a 1 gallon batch, they got the 2 gallon buckets. So these are a must and only used, repeat, only used for primary fermentation. When we get away from this, we go to the carboy. Now, the carboys are used for secondary fermentation. That's what these are for. They are specially made with a taper here because at the secondary stage is when you want to keep oxygen out. This is a 3 gallon carboy, this is a 5 gallon, and this is for 1 gallon batches. These are an absolute must. Now, I know a lot of you say, because my wife just mentioned it, it is hard to get some of these sometimes. I like these. These are the Italian style. They don't break. I have all these obviously in our Amazon store. So if you need to buy anything, but one thing that they do have is if you don't want to buy glass and you don't trust the break-in, because trust me, I have done it, they actually sell plastic ones. In fact, somebody reached out to me and I gave them a link to our Amazon store and I got plastic ones listed on there as well. Now, we talked about this being the primary, and this the secondary. One of the most common questions I get is, can I just use this as my secondary? Instead of putting it in a carboy, can I rack it and put it back in the bucket? And the answer is absolutely not. You gotta have both of these because oxygen is kept out in this one. We want oxygen in this one for primary fermentation because your yeast, as we're gonna talk about a little bit later, your yeast needs oxygen. So if you get oxygen in the primary stage, that's perfect. That's gonna make your yeast bloom. If you would do this in this bucket and use this as a secondary, oxygen's gonna get in there and you just made vinegar. Don't do it, get one of these. And if you don't wanna buy them in a store, we found a lot of ours at like Craigslist and yard sales. That's a great place of people getting out of the hobby. I actually bought a guy's whole set and I think I got like 10 of these 3 gallons downstairs. Okay, also, fermentation, remember, you're not making wine until you add your yeast. When you see that bubbler going, as you're gonna see in this part of the video, that's when you're fermenting your fruits. Now, also another thing about your primary fermentation, that is obviously where you gotta put your fruit. You don't put your fruit ever into your secondary. Primary fermentation with all your additives happens in your fermentation bucket. All right, we're ready to slice some bananas up for this banana wine. What are you gonna do there, hon?
I'm just gonna cut off each end and then slice them up. We're gonna leave the skin on.
Yeah, because there's a lot of flavor in those. Now, I had some lady that was actually making this and she did it without the skins. So you can do that. She actually preferred the peeled wine better. But when I made this, I left the skins on and I think it just adds a more of a unique flavor. I don't know. This is how I've always made it. And this is what I'm... Now, as my wife's cutting bananas, the reason I'm not showing you how to do this video, because we've already made strawberry and we made banana wine. So I got full videos on these out there. Remember, we made a strawberry watermelon and a strawberry banana.
Yeah.
Strawberry is the one that I had somebody say, I'll buy every bottle and price is no object. It is one of my favorites. It's probably in my top 5, definitely with the banana.
What about blueberry? We haven't done that in a while. I like.
What do you think's in that one in there? I just
Is that what it is?
And blueberries make some of the best wine that you've ever had. Trust me, I've won awards using frozen fruit.
I didn't know that was blueberry. I thought that was pomegranate or dragon fruit.
We got wine everywhere.
I know. He's got a lot of batches going. It's hard for me to keep track. I pay more attention when they're done.
Maybe you want to hear when I did that one.
Well, I don't think so.
Now, this is a 5-gallon carboy. Like I said, this is a 3-gallon. I hate this carboy. It is so heavy, but my wife wants banana wine. So I'm making a 5-gallon batch because she's making 3 different kinds of banana wine and we want a big one. But usually I don't like to use this. I like my 3-gallon just because these are easier to manage for an old guy like me. This sucker is heavy when it's filled with wine. Now, this is for 1-gallon batches. This is your 1-gallon carboy. These are very cheap. Again, all this is in my store. But one thing I don't like to do, I hate making 1-gallon batches because you're only gonna get maybe 4 bottles out of this. And this is gonna take you 3 to 4 months maybe, depending on your different kind of fruit to make. So in my opinion, always go big because this process takes so long, and to make 4 bottles of wine in 3 months, I don't like it. I use this as a lot of time as a tester. If I'm making a new wine and I want to see if I like it, and then I'll make a big batch. Now, another thing I want to tell you is, do you know how long it takes to ferment wine? I bet you do.
The first stage?
The first stage, primary?
I'm going to think between 30 and 45 days.
No. It's funny because if you ask different websites, some people say it only takes 2 to 3 days. Some people says it takes 2 to 3 weeks. All my wine usually finishes between 7 and 14 days.
Really?
Yeah, except when I made that Skeeter Pea, remember that wine?
God.
Skeeter Pea heaven. I got 5 bottles of this stuff. I love that wine. She's not crazy about it. But anyway, it took me a while to get that fermentation going. So that's probably my longest wine that took 21 days to finish fermentation.
How did I not know that?
Now, it's funny when, obviously fermentation is basically taking your sugar that we're putting all into this wine and it's turning into alcohol. And that's how that fermentation process takes. How much does it take in here?
Like what percentage
What
of the time?
percentage?
Probably 60 to 70.
70% over here is fermentation done. And then the rest is over here in the secondary, 30%. Probably with our recipe, because I like to make sure I get that specific gravity down to 1.0. I would say it's probably 80% here and 20% over here for my recipes. All right, honey, just peeled all of these. You ready to put it all together?
I didn't peel them. I cut them. You told me not to peel them.
She cut them. Let's get it together.
Grapes first?
Yeah, put some in. Make sure you're getting mesh bags because these are just a lifesaver when you take this pulp out of here. And we're putting grapes in with a banana just because I had them in the freezer and we're trying to use some of the stuff up in there.
Whoa.
You're missing it.
I am? Oh,
Inside.
that was one. Just one. I'll get it. Oh my gosh.
Let's get the other
That
one
smells
here, the
so good.
strawberry. All that juice.
Yum.
All right, let's get everything wrapped up here. So there we go. We got our banana done. We got our strawberry. This strawberry, I got about 13% ABV. Banana at 14%. That's where my wife likes it. I hope this cleared things up a little bit on primary and secondary fermentation. I'll show you these fermenting when we get to the yeast part. So for now, I hope you liked the video. I'll get these airlocks on these sealed up and make sure you're watching this whole series because we're getting into the weeds of all of this. Stop recording. Stop recording. Stop recording. Stop recording. Stop. Stop recording.